Hi everyone, and welcome back. I'm Becky Carr and I'll be presenting the webinar today on self-awareness and effective leadership. Some of the tools that I'll be mentioning today will be looking at the 360 feedback report, and that is such a great tool to give feedback for any leadership development program. I'll also be looking at the new Lead and Manage assessment and the new brochure that is just launching today. It's again a shorter styled report that works in conjunction with the standard assessment. Once we go through it, if anyone would really like to use it, just contact HR Profiling or your master trainer and they can pop it into your Finks account. So let's get started. So, poor decisions and effective leadership can be the result of leaders' inability to notice the world around them and their impact that they have on others. How a leader might communicate, make decisions, and collaborate has tremendous impact on their ability to lead and influence others, and of course on their personal success. It's said that self-awareness in a leader is absolute key in effective and successful leadership today. Without it, you might not know your impact on people, or such things as your strengths and weaknesses, or even when those strengths are used to such an extent that they become overused and, in fact, a weakness. Being self-aware doesn't mean that you know everything or get everything right all of the time, but it does mean that you have an awareness of how you might impact others and your environment. So not only are leaders required to be self-aware, but they're also expected to adapt their style in many areas and to the needs of their team members. This, of course, is not easy at times, especially under pressure. Later in the webinar, we'll be looking at a few of these areas that these adjustments might need to be made in, and also too some blind spots and also tips for improving leadership interactions with each of the styles. So why is self-awareness just so essential for leadership? Well, it helps you become more effective because you know how well you are currently doing. It helps you make the right decisions, know your strengths and challenges, and know when you're potentially wrong because you have certain blind spots towards yourself or you might have towards others. There are some really great leaders around us, and through technology and social media these days, we get to know and hear their stories quite frequently. Of course, many of their stories express messages of just how important awareness is in effective leadership, especially when it comes to knowing your blind spots in your own style. This is where extended disc can be so good in feeding back information to leaders about themselves or about how they operate. So a more prominent leader, and gosh, my personal favourite, is Richard Branson. I like the use of his stories as he tends to be so honest with his actual own natural blind spots. He often writes about them these days, so it makes his journey very interesting to follow. It's hard not to like the guy, and of course he's pretty charismatic, effective, and of course successful. So, so Richard Branson is that type of charismatic leader who will jump off a plane and have a work in progress meeting while parachuting. Goodness, I wish I could do that. He's not afraid to fail. In fact, he's failed several times in both his personal and his business endeavours, yet he is also self-aware enough to know when he was wrong. I remember reading about him when he tried to introduce virgin cola in the mid-90s, and like a lot of newly highly marketed products, there was some success early on, but eventually it petered out and literally died a slow death. So Branson often reflects on why it never took off, but in a nutshell, he attributes it to his own personality and some of the traits that might naturally fit with it. The challenge to win at all costs, the big vision of what can be, the need to control everything, not weighing up risk properly, to name a few. I bet you can guess his personality style or his behavioural style. This type of determination, of course, would naturally come with some blind spots. And his were about his wins and his personal ambition and his new ventures, and if actually they suited the Virgin company, the core values of them and their ethos. In this case, his push for personal success overrode the fit for the actual company. He admits he was blind to it at the time. He says, "We realise that I failed to adhere to my own rules. Virgin specialises in shaking up industries where consumers are getting a raw deal, but there was no great dissatisfaction with Coca-Cola, Pepsi, or other soft drink brands at the time, so the business was a financial failure. We were so intent on repeating our model that led to previous successes that we didn't notice the problems with our own idea. But we always learn from our failures, which makes us better at being self-aware. So after this expensive failure turned into a lesson learned, he was able to understand his own blind spots as a leader a lot better. So how many of us are actually aware of our own blind spots? You know, blind spots can come in many forms and in various areas, and are often more emphasized when we are under pressure. Blind spots can come in many forms, and these are shown on the screen here, which we'll have a look at shortly. We are so often aware of our own strengths that, you know, in times of using and overusing our strengths, they can actually be a downfall in many areas. So let's have a look at what might look at being our overuse, to a point that these can actually be a hindrance to our effectiveness. And again, they can create huge frustrations for others around us. Just to note that there is a really good frustration slide as well, with all the combination slides on it, not just the 4 that I'm using here. And you can find that on the VIP pages at the HR Profiling website. So let's have a look. We know D, the traits of D, as being strong-willed, decisive, independent, tough, competitive, for example. But overused, they can soon become and look aggressive and blunt, self-centered. They can exceed authority and become quite overbearing. It can frustrate people a lot. And some of the frustrations can be, don't pressure us so much. But the D would come back and say, you know, we must start right away, right now. Your I, of course, they're enthusiastic, they're inspiring, energetic, persuasive, social. But again, their overuse can make them look like they are flamboyant, frantic, hasty, careless, indiscreet, so open that they can become indiscreet. And they can lose sense of time, their focus. The frustrations we often hear are just stop talking all the time. And their feeling is, you know, getting to know people and experiencing positivity is very important to the team. So the S-type leader, we know them as being trustworthy, steady, calm, careful, patient, modest. They're good listeners. However, in their overuse, they can become very resistant to new ideas and completely and very stubborn. They don't express opinions, or they don't express opinions a lot anyway, but they can become even more held back. And of course, are not proactive in seeking change. And this can cause, frustrations in other people. Don't always resist everything. And they're thinking holding on to their basic values will help our team on the right course. So the C type, we're looking here at, we know their traits as being disciplined, precise, formal. They follow rules. They're logical, careful, and reserved. However, overuse of these traits can become withdrawn. They can get stuck in detail and can't move on. They express their opinions even less and become even more risk adverse. They can become real warriors or worrywarts. The frustration is that people will see them, you know, don't be so theoretical all the time. Their feeling is, before we start, we must first understand issues thoroughly. So that's a little slide with obviously the traits that can become overused that can set off a lot of frustration for those around us. So effective leaders are aware of their strengths, but are careful not to overuse them. They are very aware of their development areas, and while they may not choose to develop them, they certainly do not deny or ignore them. Part of becoming self-aware also means finding out what others' perspectives might be of us, our blind spots. We might know some of these blind spots ourselves, but we can be completely oblivious to other areas that might be holding us back as leaders. How can you find some of these areas out? Well, a few months back, I did a webinar, the Open 360 Feedback. They are excellent for just this sort of thing. So the extended DISC 360 feedback tool can measure skills, behaviours and competencies of an individual person. It's a completely separate tool to the behavioural assessment, just to let you know. It can be used in many areas such as performance appraisals, succession planning, team development, and therefore it's excellent in looking and analysing leadership and is often used in a leadership development tool. The 360 feedback is designed to measure the opinion of a group of people from all around the individual. So in this case, let's just assume it to be a leader. So the feedback would be gained from the leader themselves, as well as anonymous results from peers, direct reports, and managers. So this type of feedback, delivered well, can be a good reality check for many. Self-perception versus others' perceptions of us is really important to take on board. So you can see on the slide some of the other areas that the Open 360 feedback can be beneficial in as well. Self-awareness, obviously, identification, problem areas, perception, improved communication, improved performance, professional development, improved team dynamics. And the really good thing about this is that you can compare feedback from year to year. So it shows progress over a period of time. So in the information, the 360 report can show if there's some deviation between how the leader sees themselves and the perception of others around them. In these reports, the potential blind spots are marked as traffic lights, red showing the most disparity, then yellow, and then green for neutral. The red lights are often the ones that can cause a lot of conflict or miscommunication, as they are the perceptions that are the most out of alignment between the leader's self-assessment and the other's perceptions of them. By the way, the traffic lights can show up both ways. So, for example, when the leader's been too critical of themselves, or when the leader has been overly self-assured, and you can see a scoring card there on the left-hand side. So finding out about potential blind spots through others' perceptions, particularly in a role of leadership, is essential if you want to build on awareness. The Open 360 feedback report and any of the DISC behavioural assessments can help to highlight these potential areas. Even better, if you like to use them together, you can form some very powerful insights and give some great development directions. If you would like more information on using this tool, feel free to contact HR Profiling or your master trainer, and they can walk you through how to implement it. Another area that is also essential to know about yourself as a leader is understanding your natural leadership type. Does it tend to be more managerial, or does it tend to be more people leadership side? What we know that leadership and management are different, but they do overlap. There are many definitions of what a manager is and therefore what a leader is. Some say they are both leaders, but one has a driver or task focus and one enhances with people focus. But what is agreed is that both types of management and leadership styles are needed to be an effective leader. Sorry, I'm just a bit late turning that page over. They're both needed to be an effective leader as they are complementary to each other and overlap. Both are essential in leading, but we tend to often have one that's more natural than the other. So a leader will always naturally find different roles and situations require different styles, and that this involves the leader learning to be flexible and a bit more able to adapt to the environment or even adapt to the people. So extended DISC does recognise the differences in the two styles, as it's really important to know which style you might have a natural tendency to veer towards. If they have an awareness of themselves that they can learn to combine with the other style, then that's even more beneficial. So, for example, managerial types might learn to soften around their people, while people-styled leaders might learn to be a bit tougher and focus on tasks and details and results. It's this awareness that makes them great leaders, and they can adapt themselves when needed. They can play to their strengths when needed and potentially surround themselves with others that can help deal with their development areas when needed. We know different roles and situations require different leadership profiles, as we just talked about. As we know, extended disc model describes the four-quadrant model of human behaviour. Each quadrant is connected with a style of D, I, S or C, or of course a combination of them. Behavioural styles located on the diamond map also represent a leadership culture. You can see on the slide by what I mean, where the different cultures actually fit. You can see that even the name of the different cultures of the behavioural style that impact and influence it. Understanding your natural leadership culture and how it may evolve is a really good idea because it can highlight some really good information. So let's take some time to have a look at them in a little bit more depth. So if we start with the active side on the right and work our way around to perhaps the more reserved types of leadership on the left of the diamond. Let's have a look at the D-style leaders. The D-style leader, and the one we would call authoritative, focuses more on authoritarian style of leadership, where the leader is almost in complete control and in charge. It tends to be where the leader manages the followers and can apply pressure to attain targeted short-term goals. The leader tells and follows, and they listen. And obviously things like speed and quick execution are synonymous to this type. They tend to be comfortable in crisis situations and don't mind making tough decisions quickly and often without a lot of information. An area that can tend to be a challenge for them, though, is they are so result-driven that they can tend to overlook people's strengths or see people as any other resource, which again supports a common view that they can be quite unempathetic. The DI leader, more likely, displays a dynamic leadership style, one of change. The I in them presents that persuasive, charismatic, and enthusiastic leadership style, but the D style demands that quick results and very much compete to win. Change leaders are visionary pioneers because they focus on the big picture. They are effective and energetic and often create a very positive and optimistic atmosphere around them. So the I-style leader tends to be more informal and usually social while focusing on creativity, positivity, and enthusiasm. A high-energy environment is often more valued than things like accuracy, tasks, and details or the rules. Emphasis on personal relationships and leading as a friend is common, though they still tend to promote competitiveness, but through things like inspiration and not so much pressure. Often their authority is based on charisma, motivation, and producing good atmosphere, which they're pretty comfortable creating for others. The informal leader will often thrive on new and evolving organisations that harness a lot of variety. They are seen as people leaders and need and love contact with others. So the IS style leader focuses on participative leadership and therefore a cohesive team spirit, and being open, friendly and receptive is usually the result. Participative leaders work with followers and tend not to be hierarchical. Goals and responsibilities tend to be shared, and often this type of leader often serves more as a facilitator than a manager. So over to the S-style leaders, and that leadership culture tends to be considered a little bit more reserved. The S leader will be seen as being supportive, and they tend to guide and teach and develop followers. The S-style leader emphasises loyalty, consensus, trust, and sincerity. Supportive style leaders support their team and provide and expect to receive mutual support and back from their team. Their authority often comes from things like experience and expertise. However, they are also comfortable maintaining a stable and service-oriented approach to their leadership. Supportive style leaders emphasize gradual evolution while strongly focusing upon agreed long-term goals. They often feel comfortable leading a small team and show a lot of participation and a real hands-on type approach. So the SC leader, that's a combination that results in a leader that focuses carefully on planning. These planning leaders are thoughtful, cautious, structured in their leadership. They tend to operate in known areas and are seen as calm, but determined to do things the right way. They clearly communicate expectations and will carefully prepare to meet set objectives. So on to the C-style leaders. A C-style leader tends to emphasize very much quality, rules, and compliance. The quality type leader tends to maintain distance from the team and therefore might create a less interpersonal connection. They are often seen as being a bit aloof from people at times, especially from the perspective of the high people-oriented styles like I's that enjoy the connection. The quality leader focuses on systematic approach and ensures everyone knows what is specifically expected of them. They tend to prefer emails and written directions to communication, as then they have evidence and history to back them up if needed. As a leader, they will analyse details and are interested in facts of a situation rather than the emotive feelings. So lastly, the CD style. This leader focuses on power through authority and often centralised leadership. So these power-centred leaders often have a very high standard, are very demanding of themselves and others, and have a low tolerance for errors and unauthorised changes. Their leadership culture tends to be formal and often hierarchical. Therefore, any expectation is that of high individualism, and that is often installed in their environment. They prefer a structured and practical approach along with relying on data as well as information. So I know we've had a good look at those, but it's always really good to understand some of the leadership cultures a little bit more in depth than what we just have there with one word. So if you'd like a bit more information on that, there are some in the VIP pages, a little bit more, a couple of pages on each leadership style, a bit more in depth. So, like anything, we can gain some insights from generalised information available about strengths and development areas of these leadership cultures. These are areas that tend to be typical of that style and can be utilised or improved on to enhance their leadership performance in general. So when we look at successful leaders, it's very apparent that effective leadership comes from all around the DISC styles. There's no one particular behavioural style that is an effective leader. Each leadership type brings their own unique strengths and development areas to their own leadership culture. So, for example, the D style, they like to control and make tough decisions when needed. They can do that. The I style, they have high energy and can inject atmosphere into a team. The S tends to be doers, so they get things done while looking and keeping values such as fairness ingrained. The C focuses on doing things right, implementing rules, and are often experts in their field. So like anything, where there are strengths, there's also some areas that need to be constantly looked at and potentially developed. The D style needs to be more aware of others' strengths and how much change and risk they may implement, too much, too fast. Your I style needs to keep an eye out for the end goal and stay organised and plan, stay focused. The S style needs to make decisions faster if the message is one of change, so think outside the status quo. The C style needs to be less critical of themselves and others and be prepared to embrace unpredictability more, less perfectionism. We've had a good look at some of the leadership cultures, their impact, their strengths, and some development areas. The new Lead and Manage assessment has all these and more, so let's take a look. The new Lead and Manage report has just been released today. It's typically a shorter styled report, so it goes nicely in conjunction with the standard assessment, or in this case, it actually can be a standalone report as it does have the profile and diamond graphs in it as well. It concentrates on specific information that might help leadership development. So one of the main areas it concentrates on is the competencies that highlight the difference between leadership and management. Look, I won't go into everything about the new assessment in this webinar, as I'd rather you have a look through it yourself. But the Lead and Manage has the profile graphs as well as the size, similarity and position chart to help you analyse the profiles, especially helps in outlining any special cases that may actually be in the profiles. So if you're unaware of how to actually use the charts, then get in touch with HR Profiling or your master trainer. But as you see on the screen there, the P size is about the size of the profiles. The P sim is for similarity between the two, and the P pos is the position where it lies on the profile, and those can be very helpful in determining special cases. The lead and manage also has the flexibility diamond with the arrow, so you can see how someone might want to flex their behaviours, as well as the arrow showing how they're currently adapting, if at all. The leadership culture diamond is also there on the same page, so you can see where they fit in that area as well. There is obviously a bit more in-depth information over the page about that. So like we've just been through today, this shows a few snippets of what each of the leadership styles are without having to go into too much depth. So you can have a look at where a person's profile is mapped and balance it up with where they actually are on the leadership culture. So this is about how your employees may perceive you. This is a great page. It's great for reality checks, though it's not as in-depth as, say, like a 360 feedback page, but it does offer some excellent information on how others might perceive you in general, and especially some strengths about those perceptions. The Lead and Manage assessment uses both the new management diamond as well as the new leadership diamond. So similar to a flexibility map, it shows where the leader's natural style is mapped, and that can correlate with the wording about the various management and leadership behaviours. It really helps bring their potential style into context. And you can see on the screen there the blue area where on the management map, image and social is highlighted, whereas in the leadership, they are about inspiring and encouraging for leadership. So they are two great new diamonds that are put to good use. So the area that has had a lot of benefit in the pages of competencies towards the back, these are broken into some really detailed areas of management versus leadership style competencies. They're actually broken into subheadings even further, so you can really get to build a good picture about this person, managerial style versus leadership style, and their different behaviours that you can see through the competencies. So some of the other pages, because we don't have enough time to bring up absolutely everything today, but these are things like how you help your employees achieve their goals, and in turn, how you achieve your goals. Things like your decision-making style and how your employees see your decision-making style. So very much based on awareness. Some of the other pages are motivators and situations that reduce motivation. Again, verbal communication style, and then again, how others see your communication style, which is pretty handy. And of course, development tips. Well, development tips, improving leadership, which is fantastic. It has reminders, suggestions of what to avoid, as well as specific development areas that are unique to your actual combination of style. As a consultant, this page is gold. Overuse diamond, of course, and that highlights the right text like we've been talking about today, but this is brilliant to visually highlight to a leader their potential issues of overusing strengths. It's great talking platform for what we've been talking about already today with overuse. And again, it has a personal action plan done in a simple workbook style for the leader to fill in and start thinking about certain areas of their assessment. Also too new out and to support the assessment is the new and short brochure that has been developed to go along with the lead and manage assessment. It's excellent in promoting the content of what to expect, as well as laying foundations of what the assessment's based on. It talks about everything from identifying managers in your team to pages that remind us that we can use open preview in things in the leadership development, things like smart solutions, and of course customizing a report that can really help enhance leadership development programs. Excuse me. So we know that effective leaders are often determined by how well they interact with their employees and others. Their competence to relate, communicate, influence, and motivate others is critical in these days. It's skill these days, and you need it to succeed in creating successful, long-term relationships with everyone: subordinates, customers, prospects, colleagues, stakeholders. A successful leader is someone that is self-aware and they know who they are, especially in relation to strengths and development areas. They are aware of their strengths, but they know when not to overuse them, making them a hindrance. They are aware of their development areas and choose what and when to develop them. However, they certainly don't ignore or deny them. Effective leaders are aware that they need to modify and adapt their behaviour from one interaction and situation to the next, sometimes inspiring and charismatic, and at other times directive. They understand that to have effective interactions with employees, they must identify their styles and modify their own leadership styles to suit the role or people around them or the situation. Therefore, being self-aware as a leader is utmost and very critical. So thanks for being here today. It's always lovely to see everyone logging on, and also familiar names and quite a few new ones. If you have any questions about the webinar today or would like to get the lead and manage assessment put into your Finks account, then contact us by emailing or, of course, ring the office. Don't forget the new brochure, as it's also very helpful to outline things to yourself as well as to clients about the new assessment. So this webinar itself will be up on our website within the next week if you'd like to listen to it again, as I know it's been quite a full one this time. So I'll hopefully be seeing you logged in for my next webinar early November, where I'm actually going to go through the steps of debriefing a behavioural assessment. And also too, don't forget Courtney is doing a Finks technical webinar on the 26th of October, as there's been a lot of new and fantastic updates recently. So don't miss out on finding out how these updates might help or affect you. Thanks again, everyone, and let's chat soon.